so I don't get any feedback.
Yeah. Right, that's it up on the Discord. That's it reblogged on the Tumblr. And
The
there we go.
thing.
Yeah. Cool. Hey Alrascala, how you doing? I do like how Holly is really kind of patient there on your lap.
Yep. She sits here while I write.
Is that like an added a buff, or is it a negative buff?
I don't notice her after a while. It's kind of funny. Um,
That's cool though, because it's like, just kind of keeps you warm and
yes, she's a
lets
wee
you.
space heater.
You're
Um,
you're doing Alrascala. Okay, well, hopefully you're doing all right. See, yeah, I've got a cat just kind of like out of arm's reach, and I think he's quite happy to be out of arm's reach, to be perfectly honest. Oh, excellent. Is that ghouls just want to have fun on your t-shirt?
it is.
Nice. Hey, Runaway. Hey, Kashiro. We'll give it a couple more minutes, I
We'll give
think.
it a couple of minutes.
Couple more minutes. Enough time to stare at Tumblr and stare into the abyss.
Or you can stare at Holly.
Yeah, better move actually.
Hi. She smells like coconut at the minute, so she's quite fragrant.
Very nice. See,
Yeah, she was at the groomer, and normally they use an unscented thing.
now she
Yeah, this
smells
one's
like
fine.
now she smells like pina colada.
She does a little bit, yeah. Hi. How you doing? Eh?
Cool. So I reckon we can probably just start then.
Yeah, I think we're good.
But I suppose we might as well start with telling you about how this stream's going to go, because there's some slight format changes. And that format change is we've kind of decided to make the stream a little bit more compartmentalized, so to speak. We're going to be doing a shorter stream. The idea is that it'll mean that we dwell less on certain things and we remain a wee bit more focused. And it also works a bit better. We're going to aim for more 2 hours as opposed to three. 3 hours is asking people who watch the podcast to kind of have quite a significant time investment, and it's not the same as one of my other streams. So I think being able to kind of focus in on the topics that we want to cover, we've kind of aimed for that 2 hour window, which is nicer, I think, for everyone involved. It also means that Holly can actually get her food sooner. We
Yes, that
actually,
was the chief
yeah,
complaint.
yeah, it was. It was the major complaint, and it was, sometimes I get the cats tapping their wrists saying, "Come on, it's time, go to bed, go to bed, because we want your chair." But yeah,
Thank you, Sky.
yeah, your hairs are both looking nice. Thanks very much. I put a lot of effort into it before I before I came on stream.
I didn't. I'm just like mine air. My hair's actually still wet. It's air drying right now, so
That that's
these are
that's that's what
getting my
makes it work.
natural hair. Yeah, hi.
I'm actually overdue a haircut, to be honest. I've got one booked for the start of July, because it'll be Jessica's brother's wedding, so we're gonna be.
Oh,
So I'm gonna
need to get yourself
yeah,
spruced
I'm
up.
gonna have to look semi decent, unfortunately. I know, shame for all of you who watch me every day. But no, I think obviously we let everyone know the kind of topics of the stream in advance. Um, Obviously it's been a week. It's definitely been a week, and it's not been a great week for a lot of people. So just to kind of say before we do begin, we're going to be talking about Roe v. Wade. We're going to be talking about the European Convention for Human Rights and the UK government's attempts to scrap it. And we're also going to be talking about the train strikes and the kind of media surrounding the train strikes and how the kind of sort of like mainstream press has reacted in very, very typical fashion. So we're going to be covering all of those, and I think from both of us, if you need to sit this one out for whatever reason, just for your own mental health or whatever, please do. Don't.
Yeah, please do not subject yourself to more trauma dumping if you cannot handle this. You
Yeah.
need to take care of yourself first, please.
Yeah. At the same time, this also isn't a doomerism stream at all.
No.
We're not going to be. We're not going to be all gloom and doom. There's always hope in every little thing. So we're going to be covering a bunch of that. Holly Mop really wants that hug. That'll be you for the rest of the stream now.
It will be. I think I'm stuck. Right, hang on. There we go.
So, I suppose it's probably we'll start with Roe v. Wade, because unfortunately I was midstream on Friday when the news broke. And to be honest, it's kind of hard to play Stardew Valley when something like that gets acknowledged. Like my peaceful, idyllic farm was somewhat ruined by the.
It's hard to do things
Yeah.
that feel trivial when the world is falling apart.
Yeah, it wasn't
It's-
great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, of course, it's like Stardew Valley sometimes just overly cheery, so like I didn't really want to continue it. But for a lot of people, sorry, can people hear me chewing down the mic? I will stop. But I'm just seeing Sky's Eye for Scotland mouth noises, which is a completely different thing. But I suppose on the Roe v. Wade thing, I mean, for you in the US, how are you dealing with it, Joy?
There's been a lot of angry crying, not gonna lie. It's very devastating. I'm lucky to live in a state where abortion is protected. On an unrelated note, if anyone wants to come visit the Great Lakes, happy to drive you there and back. Yeah, it's not good. It's really not good over here. The mood is very much angry and upset. There's been a lot of despair, but there's also been a lot of hope with it as well. Like, I've not seen this many people protesting since the George Floyd protests that were happening. So there is a lot of people out there trying to help and trying to make sure that things don't progress any worse than they already are. But we do have to be active about it, and also despair is what will cause us to fall apart, and trying to find a medium between being informed and staying sane is really hard at the moment. It's not good. So yeah, it's not great over here. And I imagine for the rest of the world watching as well, it's kind of just like the canary in the coal mine of what can happen if you allow the far right to get too much power.
Yeah, I think that is kind of what we've like. It's so hard because like America is this kind of like test of, you know, we see what happens and then it ripples out. So like the absolute extremes of the US come into, you know, the UK and I suppose the West as like these kind of fringe ideas, and it gradually gets more and more. And what you find, and it's what the right wing are particularly good at, is they start as a fringe issue in the US that grows to become more mainstream. Then what they do is they start like getting other fringe Western countries, like, you know, they start fringe movements there, like the growth of, you know, like transphobia, for example, in the UK is an example of that. And then what you find is when that reaches almost a self-sufficient point, they drop it and then they focus all their support back on America, and that's what gets a lot of the things over the line, because of course in America, like the discourse on America in regards to like trans rights, for example, wouldn't be at the point it is without the right wing American folk being able to point to, like, you know, J.K. Rowling and, you know, the sort of transphobes in the UK. And I don't want to. Yeah, I feel like both issues are kind of intertwined. There was a couple of people on Tumblr that were saying, you know that like trans rights and the Roe v. Wade are like two separate issues, and they were really
It's really not.
asking me not to kind of like not to mention the two, but it's like they are very much interlinked.
It's the basic human right to autonomy that we're being stripped of,
Well,
and
exactly.
the normalization of one person being dehumanized allows it to happen to other people. So anyone that can't see the relation between them is really not thinking about it critically, and they also don't realize how vulnerable they are. They are hoping that because they are not part of this minority group, they will not be targeted. That is not the case. They are going to come after everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, they announced it. They announced that they're going to come after a bunch of the other laws that will affect same-sex relations. This is just this is the test. This is them trying to erode personal autonomy, and it's so far it's been successful, and it's because it's been normalized by right-wing groups who are very happy to punch down as long as they're not the ones being targeted.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think one of the things that's always like a good counter to that is obviously organization on the left side, and unfortunately, the left side we tend to like arguing internally a wee bit more. Um,
yeah,
that's like a really big thing that we never seem to get right. One of the things that I was like again, I'm not on the ground in America, so I'm never exactly gonna know. But I think one of the things that's quite interesting at the moment is there is this like surgence in like unions. Like I think I see a lot, at least from the people I kind of follow on Twitter, that there's like Starbucks unions becoming a thing.
yes.
I don't know how that works it seems to be individual Starbucks stores as opposed to like a overarching
Well,
state.
they're franchises, so it has to be individual to that one place, I
But
believe, for it
right,
to
okay,
actually work.
and that is purely because it's a franchise. It's strange that there's not like a statewide Starbucks union, even if it is multiple owners. I suppose I'm surprised
Yeah.
there's not that kind of overarching organization. But I was kind of wondering how much like trade unions could actually, like workers unions, could actually insert themselves into that kind of conversation.
Um, Probably a great deal. I mean, part of it, we're seeing companies now that are coming out and saying, "Oh, we'll fund for you to go somewhere where you can have medical procedures done."
Yeah,
Um, and I think if trade unions were involved in making sure that we had better access to healthcare and better access to certain things, I think it would have a huge improvement on the standard of living in the US, to be honest. Because even saying like, yeah, as Sky saying, Dix and Bungie both came out with support for funding, but it's kind of monstrous that it hinges on your ability to be employed, because the people that will suffer the most from this sort of thing are the people that are already financially unstable. It tends to be the marginalized groups that can't afford to travel and to go do these things, and they don't generally work for places that will have that sort of mentality. So having a union that would negotiate for us on behalf and make sure that our insurance is better would be it would change things on a fundamental level. I mean, personally, I don't think you should have healthcare through your employment anyway, because as soon as you become unemployed, you lose your healthcare. I
yeah.
am all for, you know, nationalised healthcare. Um, I grew up with one. It was wonderful. Living over here, the reason we live so like it's not a secret on my blog. We struggled many years financially because we were trying to afford my medical care. Um, we have private medical care that we pay for because we couldn't get it through Mothman's job. And when we were offered it, we actually turned around and said no, because if he loses that or something happens, we lose our access to healthcare. And it would mean I lose access to a lot of things, and that would include things like access to abortion if I needed it. And that's not comfortable for me.
Mm.
And I think unions could help with that, but I think unions would also help to um, I think they really could help to get the idea of nationalised healthcare in this country. I think if they were allowed to actually mobilise and do things, we could actually end up with a much better society. If you read the newspapers, it's not that at all. It's the end of the world. And if you're getting your information from that, then I would understand how you're hesitant to trust unions. It's even happening in the UK right now. I was reading stuff about the strikes in the UK. Every single news outlet is, oh, this is the death of everything from unions. It's the death because privatization and capitalism. Like, yeah. But unions would definitely be a benefit, I feel. I feel if we had more arguing power with employers, we would be able to push employers to do more things for us, so that things like Dick stepping up and saying, actually, we will pay for you to travel to a state where this procedure is legal. That should, I was going to say it should be the norm. It shouldn't be the norm because this shouldn't be happening, but it should be more standardized that all companies are like, well, actually, we, as part of our healthcare, we will do this.
Yeah.
And they also have to actually cover the healthcare, because I saw on Twitter a lot of people were pointing out a lot of the employees do not work enough hours to actually qualify for the healthcare coverage.
Yeah.
They keep them just shy of it so that they don't have to pay for it. So them saying it is a good gesture, but whether or not any people will benefit from it is yet to be seen.
Yeah. And can I
which is
ask,
another
like, from
problem.
like, obviously over here you hear a lot about like 0-hour contracts. I imagine it's the same in America, right? There must
Yeah.
be 0-hour contracts in existence. So by default, if you're not working the hours and you're not contracted for any specific hours, there's also that. Well, we don't require, like, we're not
You don't
even.
get healthcare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even if there is that requirement to provide healthcare, you're not meeting it, which is always minging. I think that's the problem that we've kind of got with zero contracts in the UK as well. That, like, because people aren't contracted for any specific hours, you end up locked into a job where technically you could work and achieve X number of hours, but you don't quite get there. But I think, like, obviously there's been quite a lot of, like, it's great to see kind of like protests start like right away. I think there's always a period when something terrible like this is like announced. I feel like you really do get like 24 hours of like grieving time. Like obviously some people can grieve a wee bit longer, some people need a lot less, some people will be in the organisation mode like within a couple of hours of the announcement. Some people won't need to grieve at all and they'll go and like get their head into focusing on stuff. But I do think that whenever a significant political thing happens, and I know that obviously, like, Brexit over here, losing Scottish independence referendum over here, like, I'm not comparing them to Roe v. Wade, but it's the same kind of, like, political event happens and you get to, like, quickly recover, you get to grieve for a bit, but then it's time to get organised. And I get the feeling that, like, with what's happened over the past few days, at least in the US, there is now there is a reliable window in which people who have never been politically active or radicalized one way or the other can be. And I think that that's quite important as well, because, like, I always see it as banking them, right? And I know that, like, I feel it's almost like really, really strategically, like, talking about that, but, like, see, immediately after the independence referendum was gubbed, and we lost, there was people who were absolutely devastated, and the pro-independence parties in Scotland capitalised on that, and their memberships increased massively, most of all the SNP. And then the same thing happened after the general election. There's, like, the general election in 2015, most SNP seats in a general election ever, another kind of thing. Brexit happened, and more people started supporting independence than ever. And I feel like you need to, like, from a US perspective, there needs to be the kind of equivalent. Roe v. Wade gets reversed. There is a huge number of people. Obviously, there's lots of people in the US who love the idea of that, but, like, I think there's a real opportunity for people who've maybe not been politically active ever, who've always sat out of elections. This could be a kind of watershed moment for a lot of people to go, fuck, this country's going in a way that I don't like.
I think for many it's a wake-up call, because there were a lot of us in 2016 who were saying, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, and we're told, it's never going to get that bad, you're fine, you're overreacting, you're being reactionary, blah blah blah. And now a lot of those people are going, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. Like, this is the thing that's radicalizing them, because they genuinely thought that it would never get this bad. They thought that a lot of us were overreacting, and now they're seeing, oh, actually, some of us were underreacting. And it's just, it's not an I told you so moment, because that gets you nowhere.
Yeah.
But it's very much a, okay, you've seen it, now get angry and come with us and change it.
Yeah.
And that needs to be happening. Is that your dad? Do you want to go down? Yeah, I'm going down. There you go. Go see him. Here we go. But yeah, we need to keep that momentum, because I feel like we get so far with the US. You see spectacular outbursts, and then the momentum starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the people, it's the news coverage. And then because people aren't seeing it on the news, they're thinking, well, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Because the circles that I've stayed active in have remained active for a very long time, but we lack the coverage to make it seem as if it's vital, as if it's happening. So then people just assume that it's not, and then the people that are kind of on the fence, they kind of fall aside, because they're going, well, obviously it's no longer an issue because we don't hear about it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's designed to be that way. The media coverage is designed to be that way, because they are enforcing, the whole stay at home, do as you're told. And it's really maddening to see people go, well, if it's not, say, if they have to maintain it themselves, they're not interested. And the thing is, for a lot of people, they can now no longer say, well, this doesn't pertain to me, because it now does. They are coming after the bodily autonomy of everyone in this country who is not a cis white man.
Yeah.
And not even that, just a cis white rich man, because they will also go after, what unions are left will probably get attacked as well, because they do not want anyone to be, they don't want solidarity at all. They want people that are subjugated and too worn down to fight. And for a lot of people, we've been angry for a long time, we've been burning up energy for a long time. And the thing I just want to say, if you are feeling that way, if you are feeling burned out from rage right now, it's okay to take a breath, because you cannot keep screaming constantly. You need downtime. Your entire life cannot be activism, because you will go mad. You will lose the energy, you will lose your sense of self, and you can't do that, because that's also what they want. They want you to lose your sense of self and your drive. So taking care of yourself is fundamental to rebellion against this. You need to take care of yourself, you need to take care of the people that you love, take care of your community, and it's just, I don't know, it just feels so empty. It feels so empty at the moment, but I know it's not. I'm just tired. And if you are feeling the same way, please know you're not alone. There are many of us that are exhausted, but we're not going to stop. And I hope, if you are on the fence, that you will join us and that you will not feel hopeless, because there are people that are fighting for this, and they're going to keep doing so. I will personally not go gently into the dystopian night. That is a promise from me and from many others that are also organised. So I need to say it, because I've been seeing so much despair. Literally within minutes of the news going live, my inbox had hundreds of people asking for support and for help. And I shut down for 24 hours. I completely fell apart. And I needed that. I needed the time to internalise and to take a breath. And now I'm ready, and I'm back, and I'm ready to help start raising funds for Planned Parenthood and the ACLU and a bunch of other places as well. But we do need more solidarity here. We do need to maintain that momentum. And part of that is just also taking care of yourself, which I think a lot of people forget about. There's the idea that if you're not talking about it constantly, that you're not doing enough. That's not true. You never know what someone's doing behind the scenes. And it's, yeah, I'm rambling now, because it's so emotional, and I'm trying not to look at the camera, because if I do I might burst into tears. But it's the solidarity is what's going to save us, and unions are part of that. So if you are part of a place that can be unionized, start looking into it. If Starbucks can, I mean, in the US, if Walmart unionized, that would be the end of capitalism.
Yeah.
It would overthrow everything. If you've ever looked at how the Walmart employment map is on the US, if that was to unionize, that would change everything. Same with Starbucks as well. I mean, it starts with small grassroots movements, and it keeps going from there. You start with the individuals, and then you link up and form a stronger chain. And I am hopeful that that will happen because people are pissed, and they've not been pissed like this for a very long time. But although to us it's like we're just living through all the worst parts of this, like we're living through the worst parts of our generation at the moment, and it feels relentless. But there have also been generations before us who have gone through similar things, and it's the people that have fought for things to improve that won. And we need to keep doing that as well, because it's the only way we're going to make a better future. And yeah, I'm done. Let's keep rambling.
No, I was fine with sitting back there, but no, I think like there's a ton of good points, and I think Sleepy Heathen mentioned something that's quite key. I think the size of the US doesn't help with that momentum issue, and I think that also ties in quite nearly to what you were saying in regards to the burnout. Like, because the news cycle moves so fast, it's almost designed to make sure that people burn out as fast as possible. So a combination of the size of the US, but also being bombarded with news cycles where they're covering a different story and then they very quickly move on from this. Like, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if come Monday there's some news organisations pretending that, you know, it's over and done with. And it's designed to make you think that you either didn't do enough in the moment to actually keep it relevant because the news isn't reporting on it. So you end up getting burned out and you're feeling shit because you felt like you didn't do enough. But there's still plenty of time for you to do whatever you want. It's designed to make you feel shit so you stop doing stuff.
Yeah.
So you stop organising and stop messaging people and, you know, talking about it.
And I think a big part of that too is a lot of people's exposure to this sort of thing is happening for the first time online. They are not seeing community organisation at a local level. And this is not to say that online activism is not valid. It is. I fully hate when people say, well, online activism doesn't count. For many disabled people, the only thing we can do is online. We can't be boots on the ground. Some people can, but not everybody can. And to say that our efforts are meaningless is rubbish. We do a lot of work. We do a lot of things. We do a lot of organisation behind the scenes. A lot of online stuff is very valid. But then there's also people that only see it as, you know, they're only on Twitter and they're seeing organisation through Twitter, and it just turned into a chaos. And I can understand how easy it is to get disheartened if your only experience with organisations online, because it's not cohesive. And there is also not that level of, the sense of community is not the same. And you need to be involved in a local level with things like this. It can't just be through Twitter. You do actually have to get involved locally. And that's when you start to see real change and progress. And you also build community that way.
Yeah, and I think that's actually it's one thing that you can be an entirely online activist, but you need that connection locally. Because if you're just one of the people that kind of like tweet out to the kind of national level, you're not gonna have that kind of grounded approach. You can be an absolutely 100% grounded in realism online activist. You just need that local level, and that is literally being able to speak to people who you could technically meet if you could. But you know, as Sky's mentioning there, you kind of can't just chuck stuff out into the void in the hope that it picks up things on Twitter. And I think again,
because people think that retweeting and reblogging is spreading awareness, and therefore that is the same thing. Spreading awareness is important, but it's not actually the most important part. It's actually the work. It's the stuff that goes into after the awareness that is more important. And for a lot of people, especially for younger people, who are maybe experiencing this for the very first time, they are so much more online than our generations were. So they don't really have the same frame of reference. Everything is online to them, absolutely everything. I remember when I was younger going to protests with my parents, you were handing out flyers in the street, and you know, and there was no online community for it, so it wasn't just a case of, well, reblogging this counts as whatever. It was, well, yeah, you could post about it on your um, if you had a forum, you could post it on your forum, but you also had to show up to the weekly meetings. You had to show up and do the things because that was the only way to get it done. And I think for a lot of people, that's a new concept. And they're coming into this going, well, this doesn't work. And it's going, yeah, because we've had all of our unions dismantled. We've had all of our ability. Like in the UK, they were trying to, they criminalised gathering for protests.
Yeah.
That's, that shouldn't happen. That you have the
Yeah.
right to protest. You have the right to a voice. And it's the fact that they're trying to take it away shows that they are shit scared of the fact that we can enact change if we get together and we actually organise. Which is why there's so much emphasis on don't bother organising, it doesn't work. Anyone that tells you there's no point to organising, they're working for the opposition. They might not know it, but they're working for the people that want you subjugated. And it's you need to get out of the mindset of I'm not seeing any progress, because there is still progress. Every day there is some sort of progress. It could be minuscule compared to the tragedies that are happening, but every progress is progress. Every inch that is hard won is still an inch of victory. And I think it's good to remember that when we're looking at things going forward and saying, oh well, like only so many places of union, like only so many Starbucks have unionized. That's still more than there was a year ago. And
I think the number of unionized Starbucks 6 months ago was 0, and now there's I think over 50. So
yeah,
like that's a massive jump. I suppose another thing I saw a really good video. It was a news interview, and I think it kind of puts a bit of a microscope on the relationship that a lot of younger people have with the political parties in the US, because like one of the women, like young lassie who was being interviewed, said that she was absolutely disgusted that within I think a couple of hours of Roe versus Wade being overturned, she received a text from the Biden campaign asking for $15, and she was like, my bodily autonomy is not your fundraising point.
yeah,
Like, you fuckers are in like every you've got the presidency, then you've got the house as well. Like, why haven't you done anything to defend it? Like now, why you now coming to the people who've already been affected by the reversal and asking for money? So I'm like just seeing that from like quite a young like lassie. She couldn't have been older than 20, 23 or
yeah.
whatever, but it was like insane how much of that was just we've had enough. The kids are all right, but it was like the Democrats really need to get their fucking arse in gear here, because they're not really working. And I feel like the one of the reasons why momentum slows as well is that you do have people who are like, the Democrats aren't actually doing their job, and you have people who still have that kind of lingering loyalty to the party, because it's often so polarized between Democrat and Republican. You have people go, oh well, if you speak out against the Democrats and criticize them at all, you obviously can't be on. There's like
Yeah.
there seems to be a struggle with third points of
The
view.
problem is, there's no true left in the US. The Democrats are centralists. They don't want to rock the boat. They want things to
Yeah.
stay the same as they are. They don't want progress and change, which is a huge. Like, there are some, and they have to side with the Democrats to get any shot of power. And that's the problem, because they're too busy eating each other alive. Meanwhile, the
Yep.
Republicans are sharpening their knives in the corner, getting ready to just spit roast them. And it's the level of infighting is not acceptable, and there really needs to be a shift towards the left in this country. There needs to be an actual leftist movement. Like, everyone talks about Bernie Sanders being left. He is what the rest of Europe would think of as being a Democrat. He's not a socialist
Yeah.
by any standards in any other part of the world, but here he is considered radical. And you're going, for me, it's so alien coming from a very socialist minded country, and I think Scotland is more socialist at times than even England is. And it's so baffling to be here, and it's like there is no left movement, and you're forced to go behind the the lesser evil. And you have to go with the lesser evil so that you can then force them to change. You
Yeah.
have to back
And
them,
and so
you
the
can drag them.
and so the actual fucking ghouls don't get in is like
Yeah.
the other thing. It's like I'll never advocate like not voting.
Yeah.
And I know that if I was in America, it would be an obvious Democrat choice. But it's so like disheartening, kind of like year on year, and having not seen any of that change. And of course, like obviously, I'm a spectator, so I'm literally just looking on looking from Scotland, going like there's a lot of things that in America that I shake my head at and go like, Jesus fucking Christ, how does this country actually like work? And this isn't me just shitting on America for the next couple of minutes, but one of the things that I saw was there's a Democrat electoral candidate who's a black woman. She was at a protest for Roe v. Wade. Her rival, who was a Republican candidate, who's also a police officer, and who was off duty, punched her in the face, and it was caught on video. And he's not been charged yet. He's been put on paid administrative leave. I'm just like, there's video footage of this taking place. Like, what the fuck? That is insane. Like a white off-duty police officer, Republican candidate, punching the black Democrat candidate. Like, what the fuck? Like that would be insane if that happened anywhere else. That would be he'd be in jail by now, I feel.
And the thing is, it being seen as normalized over here means that it can normalize in other countries, because they'll look and go, well, the US is doing it.
Yeah,
and that's the terrifying thing. As Sky said earlier in the chat, America sneezes, the rest of the world gets a cold. So seeing all these, the radicalization happening over here with the right wing and all the incidents that we have, it makes those fuckers feel emboldened, and that they can come out of the woodwork in their own communities and they can start doing these things because they see it and they go, oh, that's me, and it's being allowed to happen. And I am fully on board with make these fuckers afraid again. I get really angry when we're going, oh, well, we can't do the same things that they do because them are as bad as them. Fuck that.
Nah, fuck that. Yeah, I think it's one of the things that works as well. I mean, I remember way back, was it not, is a guy, Richard Spencer? Like, Richard Spencer got punched, and like, I've not fucking heard of the cunt since.
No,
he's
gone.
Like, like, it was
on one of the right wing forums, but he's not bold enough to go on camera anymore for mainstream media because he knows he'll get hit. He will get 7 series of shit kicked out of him.
Is the fucking definition of like talk shit, get hit. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
And I think the problem is, I think a lot of people have kind of said this, and it's been amazing seeing, like, you saw kind of Biden's tweet that was like, look, can the protests please be peaceful? We know that a lot of people are angry and frustrated right now. It's like, there was the majority of replies I saw to that, or like people who'd screen grabbed it and had put their own commentary on it, is like, civility isn't working, because if it did, we wouldn't have got here.
Yes.
And like, I think that there's a lot of people who maybe get like scared because that becomes fighting talk, but
we're at the point when fighting talk needs to happen. That's
the
thing.
Yeah.
We are past civility. Civility has failed, and it's not going to. It was someone said. Someone said something very, very benign on Twitter, and I saw a bunch of right wing people in the comments going, "This is what they actually are. They're violent. They're violent," and I'm going, as opposed to the violence you are actually enabling.
Yeah.
As opposed to the actual bodily violence and loss of autonomy you were enacting, you think people protesting outside someone's house is violence?
This is violent, yeah.
Violence is me going in there and doing something that involves the other person never coming out. That's violence. Protesting outside is not violence. That protesting is being heard.
Yeah,
Protesting is
you can already see that with some of the language that the media is coming out with as well. Because I saw it was one, and it was protesters that were protesting out of the judges that sit on the Supreme Court's house, and it wasn't they were protesting outside. They swarmed the houses. Right?
Yeah.
I was just like, fucking hell. Like, how loaded do you want to make your headline?
People's neighbours are outside protesting against them.
Yeah.
Their neighbours are outside drinking champagne and watching them and going, yeah, get them. This is not, if it was swarming, you'd have the entire neighbourhood up in arms, not joining them.
Yeah.
Like, it's so bizarre to see it happen. Like, you're seeing people's things on Twitter and a bunch of other places, like people are recording and doing live feeds. And it is mostly peaceful. They're shouting, but it's, nobody's being injured, nobody's being hurt. But if you ask the media, it's the fucking purge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we're not there yet, but just give it time. And
I did see a photo of it was Brian David Gilbert standing with a guillotine. So he posted that. He's like popular kind of journalist, used to work for Polygon,
yes.
And he was standing in his jorts next to like a full size fucking guillotine. It was an amazing photo. But yeah, I think when it comes to like, protesting and all the rest, there has to, like, I saw there was another one where it was talking about like the protesting kit that people wore in Hong Kong, and like it kind of broke down all of that. And you had a bunch of people in the comments being like, no, you need to wear like plate carriers, like body armor for bullets and stuff like that. And I think like that doesn't help because it feeds the idea that the police are gonna open fire into like mass protest groups of people. And like, don't get me wrong, the police are probably, police commit more fucking murders in the US every year than anyone else. But like, I do think that that would be insane if that was to happen. And I think, obviously, people coming forward and saying, oh, like, you have to wear, like, bulletproof vests to go and protest and all that is designed to scare people away from actually turning up. Like, obviously, everyone who turns up at a protest is doing it for, like, whatever reason. They are taking and hopefully considering their safety properly. But to try and, like, spook people and say, as bad as the police are, I don't think the local police in, Arizona or wherever are going to just start to shoot, like, thousands of protesters. That would be insane. That would be nuts. So what I'm saying, obviously, there is a danger attending protests. Don't speak to cops. Don't do anything like that. But they're, like, don't allow them to identify you. Don't give information about other people who are protesting. Don't take photos and don't post them on social media. All that sort of stuff. There's all the do not do's of attending a protest because you may be followed up by the police afterwards. But again, don't think that don't read a bunch of people online saying you've got to armor up because otherwise the police are just gonna shoot into crowds. I feel like that kind of language is just designed to scare people.
The thing is though, there's also, you have to consider that the people saying this want people to go to protest armed so that police have an excuse to fire into the crowd. So you have to be aware that there are people that are trying to cause that level of violence by telling you, oh, you have to go armed.
Yeah. Because
then the police look at you and go, oh, you're armed. And that gives them the ability to fire on you. So you have to consider where that information is coming from. Is it coming from a place of fear, or is it coming from a place of trying to
incite something? Yeah.
Yes.
And I think also just be careful who you talk to at protests as well. It is quite easy to spot undercover police. A lot of the time they are wearing vests underneath their t-shirts. They're always in the same costume. They're always wearing like
the same shoes.
Yeah, it's always like kind of like the military boots. They're always cutting about in them, regardless of the fit of everything else. And and a lot of the time it's very obvious that they're like wearing handcuffs and
Yeah.
a stab-proof
And
vest or
for the
whatever it
love
is.
of God, do not sign up for a protest.
Oh
Do
god!
not
Oh
put your
god!
name down. Do not put your phone number down. Do not put anything online. I've literally seen it on Tumblr. We're signing up for a protest. Join here to put your voice. No,
Stop!
I don't know if the person who did that was well-meaning. Thankfully, they got the shit read out of them. People going, "Are you insane? What are you doing? You are curating a list for the police just to go. Fantastic." Do not put your details online for protest.
So
Leave your phone at home and
cover
if you
tattoos.
cover tattoos, yeah, and just face mask. Also, keep yourself safe from COVID. Wear a mask. Also, cover your
Yeah.
face, just because then they can't be identified as easily.
I think one of the
Yeah.
like I find that sort of stuff fascinating because I remember there are groups that advise protesters. By the way, there are people who actually advise people on how to protest.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like one of the biggest issues when we had the Extinction Rebellion protests in London. There basically one of these groups went and basically quality assured Extinction Rebellion's processes on how they managed their protests, and it wasn't good because they literally sent a sign up sheet to anyone who gave them their email address with a what are you prepared to get arrested for tick list, and it was like vandalism of public property, and like literally all like named all the, are you prepared to get arrested for for vandalizing public property? Of course you tick that, and of course they were also keeping it all on Google Drive. Don't do that. don't don't
Yeah, don't put it on
don't do
Google
that.
Drive. Also, don't use Discord, and also don't use
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. And there was another one as well. There was one that people were promoting on Tumblr, saying use this to get abortions. Do not use it. It's actually the CIA use it. So don't use that one
Is
either.
it
It starts with
Signal?
an S. I think it's
Signal?
Signal. Yeah, people are saying use Signal. Don't use Signal. Don't use Discord. Discord hand over information to the federals as well. So don't use Discord to organise these things.
I mean, at the end of the day, nearly every organization will comply with law enforcement at some point. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's why, you know, like for all of the you know, like the period tracking apps and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like if you have the energy to do it, like, you know, pen and paper would probably be your way forward. But yeah, like there's very very few apps, like even like people, I've seen that there's a bunch of people saying, oh, this one in Germany's like really really good. As an American citizen, if you're signing up to something in Germany, like while Germany has really good data protection laws that go a lot further than GDPR in Europe, there is also that legal issue where if a court in the US asks, like chances are they're gonna comply.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like there would have to be quite a significant attitude shift in regards to like a German company flat out saying any legal requests we get from America we're not going to answer. I feel like that sets quite a it would be a huge deal. It would be a massive deal, and then it would open the company up to operating in the US and all this kind of stuff. So there's lots of organizations out there, like a lot of businesses out there that run these kind of apps, that like they probably would love to be able to do all these things, but as Dragon Saints kind of pointing out there, any organization that would in an ideal world love to would get hounded out of business and smeared by, you know, connections to the media and all the rest if it turned out that they hadn't supplied law enforcement with that information. Unfortunately, that is the way data kind of traverses around the world. But like again, like if you absolutely have to have an app, like a period tracking app or whatever, it is probably best that you do one that isn't in the States. Like the one that they mentioned, I don't know the name of it, I think it was either Clue or...
I think it was Clue.
But it was like, so if that data's housed in Germany, it won't protect you outright, but it will be a nuisance for the legal system in the US to go and request that from a German company. So like it's probably the the best one, even though it's not like infallible. So
Yeah. There's also, if you are like me and you struggle to keep like a physical calendar, there are other apps designed for chronic illness. And the thing is, you could write it in code. You don't have to put down period. You could put down something else. You could put down stomach cramps. Or like on an app that's designed for chronic illness, they have a lot of different options you can put in. For my migraine one, it does track that because part of my migraines is my menstrual cycle, and I stopped putting I stopped putting in my actual things for it, and I started putting in different data that would indicate to me, but it would be, if someone else was looking at it, they'd be going, oh, you've been having stomach pains for this amount of time, and I can go, yes, I have a chronic illness and a pre-existing condition, and as a disabled and chronically ill person, if you are not one of these people, I'm giving you permission to start using that terminology if that will keep you safe. That is, don't feel bad about using stuff that's designed for chronically ill and disabled people if it will help you keep on task with things, but not have to use specific words. Because I did get a message about that. Someone asked me, oh, is it okay if I use one of I can't remember what it's called. It's an ADHD app. The irony that I can't remember it. And they were like, oh, is it okay if I use this for period tracking because I don't have ADHD, but I have this? And I'm going, fam, use whatever will work for you in this moment, but just be aware that someone could figure it out eventually. But yeah, I've not been using any of the official ones since Roe versus Wade came on came up
firing line.
So I've been using all my other ones. I've been using my migraine one, and I just put a little mark that just says I was symptomatic today, and I know I have my own different codes that I know what means what for me. So if you have to do it that way, that's another thing as well, because I do know I personally cannot keep a calendar, like a physical one. I will lose the damn thing. It's supposed to go on your wall, except I never find them. So I have to use like smart technology because my brain, otherwise I will lose everything. But there are other options, and yeah, as Azuri says, do what protects you. And
I think that
we're in a better timeline.
Yeah.
We didn't have to do this, but this is the world we're in right now.
We'll get there though. I mean, there's a lot of good people out there doing lots of good things at the moment. Join them, encourage them, support them. Take part yourself. Do whatever it is you can. Now, I'm wary of our time here, Joy.
Yes, we've got an hour left to discuss the UK rolling strikes if we want.
Yeah. So here's our transition. We can always kick the shit out of NFT guys, right?
Yes.
So here's an absolute horror that will wrap up our Roe versus Wade discussion. So women who lose their right for abortions today, I'm going to teach you how to still get abortions done, safe and legally. Thread below. The United States will soon ban abortion countrywide. So how will you get one now? Simple. Fly to Canada. But how will I get the money to fly there? This is where NFTs come in. I'm going to give a step-by-step process on how to afford a plane ticket through NFT trading. I want to die.
When you showed that to me, I was like, no, this is satire. This has to be satire.
It's awful. Truly, truly awful. NFTs are terrible, and anyone who deals with them, I hate you.
I am so annoyed that PayPal is forcing integration with them. So annoyed. I'm able to avoid so many different business places with it, but I cannot avoid PayPal because a lot of my independent stuff forces me to use PayPal, and I keep getting like, start using NFTs, and I'm like, no.
No.
Go away. Yeah, PayPal in the US, I don't know if it is anywhere else, they are starting to look at integrating NFTs.
Yeah. Minging. Disgusting. I'm fearful for the day that I am required to use NFTs or crypto or anything like that to access basic services. If I get to that day, I am walking into the fucking ocean and I'm never coming back. That honestly, that is literally the worst fucking thing that could possibly happen. Is if, to suddenly to fucking do Asda self-service checkout, I've got to fucking swipe my NFT picture or whatever the fuck it is. I don't want an ape. I don't want anything. All in the bin. It's all worthless shite. Terrible. Sorry, you're gonna get the NFT rant now. No, but I think obviously that's on one side of the Atlantic. So we're gonna have to come and see how, because this is the thing, right? So Boris Johnson gets a fucking round of applause because he decided to say a wee bit about how upset he was to see Roe versus Wade like overturned, right? And that buys him some points. And I do think that in the UK, there is that separation of, from the on the UK side. I think it's kind of the norm that like most people are pro-choice. There's some fringe movements in the UK that are very anti, especially some religious groups or people who are super duper religious. Free Church of Scotland, probably one of them. But there's like, when it comes to like the UK as a whole, I think the majority of people are pro-choice, which is
to give
fair.
an idea of how small it is, when there was the protests outside the what's the clinic in Glasgow called again?
It's the two people protesting.
There's literally
They're two guys, two
old
fucking guys,
show
yeah.
up all the time, and it's just them.
They're
And
pricks.
people just turn up and they just hold signs that say "cunts" and just point at them, and they just leave. Like,
Yeah.
pro-choice is very much the norm in the UK. It doesn't have the same. There's not the same religious zealotry over it.
Yeah,
There are
there's
religious
also
organisations that are opposed to it, but they are in the minority, and they're not given any real airtime, which I think is a big difference. Yeah. But I remember it was Janie Godley was posting about them, and it's just
it's
so bizarre to me because I've seen it from both sides. I remember thinking, like, when they talked about protests outside Planned Parenthood, they are violent and terrifying over here. The people that come and protest are absolutely terrifying. People in the UK, it's just they'll be sitting there with their flask of tea, and it's just at most like 5 people. And they get scared off dead easily.
I mean, I remember when the new hospital was built in Larbert, where I'm from, in Falkirk. There was a bunch that used to kind of line up in, like, they would actually get chased off. It was quite interesting the way the hospital was built because you couldn't just walk in off the street, so there wasn't that clinic approach. Instead, they had to go into, like, I mean, the way that the hospital kind of works is there's a roundabout, there's a secondary roundabout in the park off the hospital, and then you get all the way up to the front gate, and they actually get chased out by security. So they end up sitting with their signs all the way back at the first fucking roundabout, which is on the main street. You're actually ages away from the hospital. The problem, though, is that anyone going into the hospital has to see that. And that's why, and it's something that I'm really, really hoping that the Scottish Government moves ahead with plans for. For whatever reason, there seems to be an issue with the Scottish Government in regards to ripping off the plaster on what seems to be really, really obvious progressive policy. And it kind of does my head in. Because, like, one of the things that a lot of people have been asking for are buffer zones. So buffer zones for clinics is like, you're not denying someone's right to protest, but you're saying you can't stand outside a clinic and harass people going into family planning. Even with your stupid shitty sign and your mug of tea or whatever the fuck it is, like that, like, you can do that, but you can do that in a way that there's alternate routes where people may or may not see you, like, and I think that's something that, like, we just need to push ahead with and, like, rip the plaster off, because at the end of the day, I'm not fucking fussed about upsetting the two guys that stand outside a clinic. Fuck them, I don't care about them. And I think it would be something that would be nice, Like it would be a nice policy to pass. Like there would be barely any fucking complaints at all. And the ones that you would get would be from these fringe people who are just nuts half the fucking
Yeah.
time.
And a big part of it is because the media, I mean, the BBC is a fucking nightmare, but the media is not as polarized as it is over here. Because over here, the media will pay attention to the you know,
Yeah.
it drives, you know, views. The more radical something is, the more likely they are to get attention to it. And you know, the UK media is definitely skewed and it is polarized, but it's not as extreme. I
Yeah.
think.
It's not as, I feel like it's almost not as hyperbolic, but unfortunately, that's the problem with a lot of stuff in the UK, though, is that it's subtle.
Yeah,
And
it's
that's,
insidious.
yeah, it's
It's
insidious and
insidious.
it's subtle.
It gets past a lot of things because it is, you know, it doesn't appear threatening. So
Yeah.
people don't pay attention to it.
I
Whereas
think,
here
like,
it's, you know, you're watching like a bomb going off. Like
yeah.
that's the difference.
And I think that the
Um,
thing, like, I sometimes struggle to really separate British media and Scottish media because, like, out of all of the Scottish newspapers, one explicitly supports independence, and unfortunately, it was on the back of an independence referendum before it launched, and
mhm.
and it is very much a pro-indie paper, so it doesn't have the facade of pretending to care about other things. It's very much a, you know, a lot of its front pages are very political. It's always political in nature. Like obviously a lot of papers are like that, but it's the only newspaper that actually wears its bias on its sleeve. Um,
Mhm.
and all the rest get to, you know, pretend to be unbiased. Oh, we're just reporting the news. They get to be all that. And I think this is a particularly interesting thing in Scotland, and we're going to come on to train strikes. But the difference in the Scottish media overwhelmingly back the strikes. And that was a cat in the background. I'm pretty sure everyone heard that scream from Fwelin. But the Scottish media backed the strikes, and they've backed basically every strike possible. Now you're like the strikes that happened in Glasgow when sort of the Glasgow City Council came in. Obviously, the SNP took over the council. Not this election, but the election past, they took over Glasgow City Council, and immediately they had to sort out the backlog of all of the shit that Labour didn't solve. And one of them was
Mhm.
like a pay dispute. Basically, you know, the gender pay gap in Glasgow for like was staggering, and it had to be solved. And you know, unions hadn't went on strike throughout the entirety of Labour, and then all of a sudden there was massive media support for striking workers, and you know, fair fucks to them. You know, they went on strike and they ended up getting that resolved. But I think there is that, you know, the Scottish media like to really support the any sort of strike because it puts pressure on the government. Now, the fucking contrast to that is if you look at the way the British media are approaching the striking workers in RMT, and it's been really interesting seeing the kind of leader of RMT, Mick Lynch. He has been fucking
Mhm.
taking names. He has bodied absolutely every single journalist, going from your wankers like Piers Morgan to your, you know, Kay Burley's and all the rest. He has just absolutely whipped the shit out of all of them because I think, you know, obviously he's just speaking kind of truth to power, um,
Mhm.
and he's, you know, they try and approach him from a let's drag him into this silly wee argument. I mean, I think Piers Morgan tried to make a big deal about his Facebook profile picture, which is a picture of, I think it's Lord Hood from Thunderbirds, who's the evil dictatory guy in the Thunderbirds cartoon series from fucking like decades ago. And the only reason he's got that as his Facebook profile is that the um is he's bald. He's bald and he's got big
Yeah.
eyebrows. So that was the thing. But yeah, fucking Piers is a twat, and I don't know. It's just the difference in regards to, you know, like the British media have very much pulled the strikers don't give a fuck about the real workers. So this is the thing, and this is how they kind of divide and conquer. And it's like, oh, but like it's not train drivers that are striking, but they've tried to pull in train driver wages, and they've been all like, oh, but a train driver's on, you know, 40 to 60k a year, and a nurse only gets 21. And the good thing about RMT as a union is they've been like, well, the nurses should fucking strike too.
Yeah,
I mean,
everyone
I'm,
should go on strike.
I'm like, there is this kind of movement at the moment. I feel like we're on the cusp of a general strike in the UK because, and you
Yeah.
see it already. You've got BA workers that are going on strike. You've got the Labour Party that's just nowhere to be fucking seen because they're hopeless. Like RMT as a union, so they're the train operator union. So RMT for anyone who doesn't know. But they actually disaffiliated from Labour back in 2004 because they recognised the party's a fucking shit show. So why would they want to pay into the Labour Party? So Labour was founded on the backs of all the trade unions, and they're just slowly beginning to disappear. Yeah,
I mean, there was the, sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I
it's
was
alright.
reading it over here. I was reading a news article, and they described Margaret Thatcher as the liberation of the country from Labour gripped by pro-unionism. How can you describe anything Margaret Thatcher did as liberation?
She liberated a lot of people from their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, she also liberated a lot of money that would have gone into national health and a bunch of other things and gave it to her friends.
Yeah.
That's big. They were talking. The thing that I was reading was talking about how they were trying to frame that the privatization of the trains had been a good thing, and that the current protests were a result of holdovers from nationalisation. No,
But
things are
no.
falling apart now because they were privatised.
Yeah.
We need to go back to having a national train service.
I mean, it's the thing that that Mick Lynch has been saying all this time was that the rail operators are taking home fucking record profits. Like some of them are on over like 500k a year, like that level, and like none of that's been passed down. And the media have also made a lot about can't believe the rail operators are striking. The railways were underpinned by government funding all the way throughout COVID. And it's like, yeah, they got 16 billion in subsidies, and it's like that 16 billion didn't reach the workers like at all. Like
It bugs the life out of me. So, as someone who has my own business, that is technically what being an author is, you have your own business, I need to keep X amount of money aside to pay my taxes, to put into the business, and then I get my wages. My wages come after everything else.
Yeah.
How the fuck are these giant companies not doing that? How? Why do I get penalised as a single person business for not doing it that way? But these massive, huge privatised industry sectors can get away with fucking blue murder, and then they turn around and say, "Oh, actually, we can't afford to pay our workers."
That's is one of the things that irks me, to be honest, because the way that it works is that these giant companies are technically too big to fail. So like I see it already. You've heard me moan about my energy bill going up. So my energy bill is rising, and I'm bracing for the hit. It's now over.
Yeah.
It's now over £200 a month, and this is despite having like a smart meter that detects it down to the fucking letter. So like I'm feel like I'm actually gonna have to resort back to doing manual readings just to make sure I'm not getting like not getting stuff stolen from me effectively. But the problem, so the company that we're with, and of course across the UK, everyone's been advised don't switch energy provider at the moment because the whole thing's fucked anyway, and you would just be moved on to a really expensive tariff like elsewhere. So I'm stuck with what we got. They do the gas and the electric, but they were bailed out. They were seen as too big to fail. They had too much of a customer base that they couldn't fail. And I think it's really I feel like there does come a point where there is that if you're providing a service as a organization, like there does come a point where you underpin so many jobs that if something was to happen, like a massive, force majeure, a hurricane wipes out your logistics system and all the rest, I think it's fine that the government does step in and help out. The problem is when they kind of companies manufacture extraneous circumstances to get government funding, but they never pass that down onto the workers. They get to they almost get to put that money towards projects that they were going to do anyway, and any savings become bosses' bonuses. So you end up with money, and you end up with like the whole service being asset stripped effectively. You have like money just being funneled out away from, obviously the workers are paying their taxes and doing, like you were saying, you have your own business as usual, you're paying your taxes, you're doing all this. That tax money is then being used to fund the massive organizations, and then the bosses are running away with the money. So it's the same thing with the fucking PPE. Like at the start of the pandemic, all of the PPE contracts was just, the protective equipment for all the nurses and all the rest of it. That was getting funneled into companies that had no fucking experience producing PPE whatsoever, and fucking running away with it. But I think it's weird because, like, I feel like America, when I think of America and how politics works in America, I'm very, like, lobbying is a massive, massive thing in America, to the point where it's almost done openly. Whereas I feel like in the UK,
it's absolutely open.
It's like, it's way more insidious and kind of under the table and a wee backhander and all this kind of stuff. So that's I'd almost say that's the difference between the two. When I think of America, I think of like almost lobbying parties and taking out your senator or whatever it is. You take them for a lunch, you wine and dine them, you fucking, I don't know, you do tons, you give them cocaine, you do whatever the fuck you want, and it's all quite out in the open. Obviously you try to avoid the scandal of it, but it's quite obvious when that's done, whereas in the UK I don't think you really see it as openly as that.
Yeah, as Dragonsaint was saying, it's done at society balls and gentlemen's clubs. It's very much the upper echelons and kind of that kind of still an old boys party.
Yeah.
It's still the old boys that are controlling things.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think the House of Commons in Westminster has so many pubs? There's like so many pubs within the building. Like where the MPs are, there are pubs in there, and you can go up for nice whiskies and all the rest on like literally in the building. It's not like they go to Soho in London and they just start to drink. It all stays in the building. But yeah, I think the way that the strikes are kind of going at the moment, I think there's a lot of very deliberate polling being done, and it's interesting seeing the kind of like the questions that'll be asked, because they come out with one question. Oh, so many people don't support the strikes. They oppose the strikes. They can't believe you'd be so disruptive. And like all of the questions of the poll up until they ask that question will be like, do you think nurses should be able to take public transport to go to work? Like the polling is tailored to specifically produce the results.
It's outrage.
Yeah. But it's there's a really good clip from Yes Minster, which is like an old kind of old-timey BBC drama comedy thing, where it's all based around like Number 10 and politics in the UK. And there is a really good scene on the polls and how they operate, and it's talking about positioning national service as a good thing, and it's like first question is, do you think children need discipline in their lives to build strong character? That question kind of leans on the, oh, well, of course, yeah, like children should have discipline and responsibility and all that good stuff. And it's like, do you want to reduce youth crime and all this sort of stuff? And eventually you get to the final question. It's, do you agree with introducing national service? And then you can make the polls say the other way by asking just the opposite questions. So polls mean nothing. This is what I'm trying to say. I mean, they're obviously good to kind of like get a touch point, but it is always really important to look at the full poll because, and this is the thing with the media again, the media will pull attention to one specific question, but they'll cherry pick that result out. They'll hide all of the leading questions into it, and then that's what's fed to you, and that's what ends up on the front pages. Dragon Saint, there is a very apt truism. There are lies, damned lies, and statistics. Yep, that's very fair. And Wartech 1998 redeemed my bicep curls. I feel like we should turn them off for this stream, but there we go. Just for you. There we go.
The people want distractions. They want what they want.
That's fine. But yeah, I think the way that the strikes are going, I don't think there's...
Hello there.
Like, I feel I'm slightly anxious that like the news cycle of Roe v. Wade will be used by British media to wash away all the stories about the strikes.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there will be an attempt to do that. I don't think it'll be very successful. I mean, the way that the strikes are going at the moment, it's also quite positive, to be honest. And there was a massive, as Sky's saying there, while at Pride, there was a queers in support of RMT. I did see it was queers and dykes support the strikes banner, which looked pretty good.
Which goes, the queer community in the UK has huge ties to strikes and unions
with the miners.
If you've never with the miners, if anyone's never seen the Pride movie from, I think it's 2014. I did stream it at one point, but that is a huge look at how it was gays and lesbians support the miners. And when it came to the Pride March, where they were told, oh, we're not going to make this march political, we're going to do this, the miners showed up in force from around the country to support them. And Labour actually wrote LGBT rights into their manifesto.
On the back of it,
And the fact that they have now abandoned a lot of that shows you that Labour has lost their way. They are no longer a party for the people.
Which is embarrassing because it's their fucking name. It's their name. Like, I mean, I don't know apart from red Tories, I honestly don't know what you'd call Labour if it didn't have that underpinning of me. And the worst thing is that they still fucking pay homage to it. And that's the thing that annoys the fuck out of me. It's like don't get me wrong, I don't think that I mean, obviously there's an SNP trade unions kind of group, but I don't think they've never based their entire identity around trade unions. And I think for Labour to do it so aggressively and to pay homage to like trade unions all the time and, the workers. But I mean, there was a fucking baroness that was on with Mick Lynch, and like Mick Lynch was like, I don't know who you are. And he was like, oh, you can't have a baroness claim to be working class. Doesn't matter where you... Like, they always do a big, like, oh, where you come from. It's where you come from. It's the, you're born working class. You're forever, like, working class. If you become a baroness, it's kind of hard to still claim that. Like, you can't have, like, she was given the baroness title, I think it was, like, a couple of years ago. But it's... Like, you don't work your way into the political class as an MP and then be awarded a title that will see you through to the House of Lords and you get to claim to be working class. I mean, it's kind of horrible that Labour have Lords. Labour shouldn't have Lords.
No, they shouldn't.
Like, well, I mean, the Lords shouldn't exist for a start, but, like, Labour shouldn't have Lords. I can't believe the Greens have a Lord. Like, and I suppose this is a good time to mention that Scottish Greens and English and Welsh Greens are very much two separate parties, and they're the only one in the UK where there is that kind of unifying name, but two distinct ones. So obviously there's no SNP in England. SNP are a Scottish party. There's no Plaid Cymru anywhere. It's a Welsh party. But yeah, so the Greens in England and Wales are completely different beasts to the Scottish Greens. Scottish Greens are pretty good. They're
They are the party that I back
yeah,
with SNP. And I vote SNP because I want independence.
yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with a lot of... saying that, a lot of them left to go with the Alba Party.
True.
Don't support the Alba Party
Good
at all. I
riddance.
think they're boring.
Yeah.
But Scottish Greens have always been part of, like, even before they were becoming more popular, Scottish Greens were always a part of our family politics and everything
Yeah.
else. And even because I think this, I don't keep up with the Scottish Socialist Party anymore. I think most of they've been integrated into the SNP, a lot of them, or the Greens.
No, they still do cut about. The guy Colin Fox, he's I think he's still the leader. I think.
Is he?
He's quite. He tends to have like a stall in Edinburgh by the statue beside the Apple store, and he's always shouting on his kind of microphone thing. It's always a wee bit like there's a wee bit of modernisation that needs to go about there. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people... I think Labour didn't help. Labour didn't really help a lot of that kind of classic socialist like workers' rights thing to like modernise into like a more, digital workforce and all this kind of thing where people are still very much working class, but they work with computers. It was always like, it's always framed as you can still be working class and work in, IT.
Yes.
It's that kind of thing. And that's different from developers that can get, 180k a year. That's a different beast, but lots of roles now require a digital element. And I feel like the Scottish Socialist Party tends to not put an emphasis on it. And neither did Labour for a long time either. There didn't seem to be that jump. And there is this thought of, working class can only be manual jobs with...
Well, there was also the idea that if you had a university degree, you were no longer working class.
Yeah.
And that's guff, because you can't get a job unless you have a degree now. And Scottish infrastructure for education means you can get your undergrad for free.
Yeah.
Free.
Free.
But like to say that, if you have a degree, you're no longer working class is nonsense.
Yeah.
Because that's not how it works. You can be working class to get a degree so that you can get a job in an office.
Yeah.
Being an office worker does not make you working middle class. It still makes you... you're defined by your wage bracket. And the fact that a lot of like Labour and everything else are kind of going, this is no... or the Socialist Party going, this isn't really our wheelhouse, is a failure of them to, as you say, modernise and to embrace the world as it is. We can't stay in the ideals of the 60s and 70s, where I think a lot of the Socialist Party ideals still stem from.
Yeah.
Is that kind of very antiquated, it worked back then, it should work now. You need to move with the times with it.
I think Hex makes a really good point there. Like, there are people with degrees making way less than so-called blue-collar workers in trades. And, like, that's the thing. I mean, I feel like this could be a tangent all in itself, but, like, class discourse, like, in the UK is absolutely fucked. Like I was saying earlier, we've got baronesses that claim that they're working class. You've got people who are on, 60, 70k claiming they're working class. You've got some people who are on 30k thinking they're the cream of the crop and they're middle class. It's such a weird thing. So like there's this weird imbalance, and I feel like a lot of class discussion in the UK, like particularly, I mean, I saw it at Edinburgh University all the fucking time. You've got people who are so obviously like Oxbridge type people, what they call Oxbridge rejects. You have them coming up to Edinburgh and just that song Common People just like plays in a fucking loop on your head, because the sort of people that go into like charity shops and they all try and dress like they were miners back in the 80s like the 70s 60s and 70s, that kind of thing. And it's nuts.
Really, there was that do you remember the news article? I think it was 2 years ago, and it was upper class Tory lassie who pretended to be poor so that she could have friends, because otherwise people would only like her for her money,
Yeah.
because the lower classes are fickle. And the whole article, all I could hear was common people, the pulp common people
Common
song.
people, yeah.
And it was her going, actually, David Cameron's quite nice, but if you say that, you'll get lynched. And I'm going, as you should, Ken.
He's not.
Like,
There was another one that was really bad, and I can't remember the specifics of it, but there was a big like uproar about it, and someone did it was an art thing, and their whole art thing was that they didn't leave like Glasgow for like, it was either 6 months or a year. They didn't leave the city for that, and they made it this big performative art thing. Like English lassie, like pretty posh, like gonna try and live in the poverty of not being able to go to any other city. And it's like, you know that there's people who do never actually like leave because they can't. It's just it's horrible. Whole thing was stinking.
I'm having to take a moment because otherwise I will just start moving a lot.
Bashing your head against the fucking ground is it's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you know, the weird thing is that, like, the thing with the strikes is that is given quite a lot of people things to kind of rally around. Like, definitely from like one, like from a particular part of the population. You've got another part, like I said, who've totally bought in into like all of the media spin. The rich train railway operators are making sure that I can't get to work. And there was media puff pieces. Anyone who was slightly inconvenienced by the trains being off got an interview. They got their 15 minutes of fame. There was a girl who had to travel for 4 hours to go to one of her exams at her boarding school because which her parents pay 18,000 a year for, and she might miss her exam. 4 hours of turn because she couldn't get the train. You've got people who, like, there was tons. There was another guy who just got to rant. He just got to rant. He was a bit miffed that the trains were off that day. It's insane how discourse in the UK regarding this thing does it, and it's orchestrated by the media, and I find it
is
very, like, obviously what Mick Lynch has done over the past, like, you know, week or so is he's absolutely made all of the journalists like totally show their arse, because like, if you, at the end of the day, they're so used to not being challenged. Like, as interviewers, they're used to not being challenged. And like, well, sorry, that's a lie. They're probably used to being challenged in regards to that kind of polite challenge way. But like, Mick Lynch has openly called people liars during interviews. Like, you've lied about that. And
it
they
gave
don't.
so much life when he did that. I was literally
Yeah.
watching it and I was just like, thank you, someone actually is speaking sense.
But
there's no
yeah.
dilly-dallying. He's just going, you're just lying.
Yeah, he's like, you're just lying. And I think that's one of the things that, like, the left need to start doing more of, is just fucking take the piss. Like, forget all the faux, like, politeness, like, civility stuff. Like, just start taking the fucking piss, because it works. You get a good response. Like, Mick Lynch has been invited to nearly every single fucking thing. He was on Question Time. He was on everything. But it's because he gets views. Because for a change, like, they're not watching two people try and be polite. They're not watching a Labour person trying to out-polite the Tory. Like, the Tories being called a fucking liar because they're lying. It's weird.
Civility is the same as respectability politics. It is made to make you look bad for talking up and speaking up for yourself. And a lot of it's framed as, well, if you can't be polite, you don't deserve to speak. That's not lack of politeness is not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen is that someone with power can take away your rights, which is what these cunts are doing. And then they have the nerve to turn around and say, well, you're not handling me with kid gloves when you're talking to me, therefore I'm using that as a justification for stripping away more rights.
Yeah, and that was I'm trying to remember, is that I almost feel like it's the natural kind of evolution, or maybe it's back in high school when if you showed any sort of emotion during an argument, you lost it, because
Yes,
it's
it
like
is. It's a
you're
very
you're
juvenile
you're
understanding
you're
of how arguments work
it
and
is
how
it's
discourse works.
yeah, it's oh sorry, you're crying while you're hysterical and you're not thinking logically. And I think that's like that's where we can totally go into that at some point, the whole like
We could.
atheism to Jordan Peterson pipeline, I like to call it.
Oh God,
But
yeah.
but there is that sorry, I only deal with facts and logic, and you're getting angry, therefore you're not thinking logically. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm getting angry because you're a dickhead. And I think that kind of respectability politics has always kind of irked me, because it's like you're trapping the people who have the most to lose into a fight against their right to exist, and you're complaining when they get upset about that, and it's minging. So that
And
that
the thing,
that bugs
yeah,
me.
the thing is as well. Like, I'm somebody that bawls my eyes out when I'm angry.
Hmm.
I could be reading you. I could be dragging you for filth and be crying while I'm doing it. I'm not crying because I'm hysterical and I've lost control of my emotions. I'm crying because that's just my body's response to any sort of stress.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean anything. It's just a physiological response. But the idea that you have to be calm and collected at all times doesn't mean anything. We don't get progress by being calm and collected. We get progress because we fight back.
yeah,
And it's the respectability politics of it, and this civility that goes with it, is a hindrance, and it's designed to play towards leftist sensibilities of, well, everyone has right to think. It's designed to play on the leftist ideal of humanity,
yeah.
and it's designed to appeal to your sense of intrinsic rightness and how you should handle yourself and how others should handle you. But they don't play by that rule book. They're using it to kneecap you, which is why you need to throw it
Yeah.
away.
And
It
I
doesn't
think
work.
yeah, and I think it's funny that also kind of ties into like I think because a lot of people are that we like to win on the left side of the political sphere, but we don't like to win big. We kind of like the reason why a lot of right wing stuff and like far right stuff gets so much oxygen is the like people on Twitter who can't help but dunk on like really bad shit that's like spouted out into the world. There's so much of that, and it gives it so much more oxygen than it ever deserves. And I've really put a fucking lid on it on Tumblr recently. See some of the shit that I've dealt with. Like, obviously, I don't mind going in. There was a time on Tumblr, probably mid-referendum, I would have fucking pages long reblog arguments with people. That were never going to get convinced. And to be honest, part of that was for show. I know that there was lots of people who were viewing my posts at the time and being informed through how I dealt with it. But at the end of the day, like, when I'm speaking to fucking people now and I'm dealing with, either people who hate sex workers or transphobes or whatever it is, like, they just become great block lists. Like, that's honestly
Yeah.
how I roll with it now, because it's like, fucking, I'll never know you, we'll never meet. Like, at the end of the day, this is for a community. It's not for, like, I'm not trying to fucking convince or win over a transphobe. Like, I don't
No.
really have time for that. Because at the end of the day, people always think that there's just two sides, but there's probably also a lot of like don't knows as well. And I think that's the thing that we need to, like, from an independence campaign perspective. There'll be people who are still on the fence. Though these people aren't clueless and have never not considered independence or whatever. But like, you're not trying to convince no's to yes as much now. The people who are still anti-independence will remain anti-independence. You want
Mm-hmm.
to speak to the group who can reasonably be convinced, and like, you don't do that by fucking entertaining all of the ideas of your opponent.
Yeah.
Um,
There's no
so
point wasting your oxygen on them, and there's also no point in
yeah,
giving them a bigger platform. Because that's the thing when you're talking about when you're on Tumblr and everything else. I do not publish or reblog purposely inflammatory things. I get a lot of messages going,
Mm.
"Oh, if you were actually fair, you'd debate me." And I'm going, "This isn't this is not a public forum.
Debate
This is
me,
my
debate me.
space. Debate me. Give me a higher voice because I know you have more traction than me.
Yeah.
Fuck off. Die in your echo chamber. Suffocate. I am not here to give you a voice. You
Yeah.
want the same traction I have, you go and work for it. I am not going to entertain you. I'm not going to give you any sort of platform. And it should be the same with everything else as well. We should not be giving airtime to people that are so staunchly, like you're saying, like we should be focusing on the maybes. We should be
Yeah.
focusing on saying this is how we actually plan to move forward, instead of just talking ourselves blue in the face, trying to convince people that want us to talk ourselves blue in the face, so that they can then turn around and go, well, actually, I still disagree with you. Keep debating with me and never make any progress.
Yeah.
It's they want you to use up your energy on them so that you can't get anything done.
And that,
Fuck that.
yeah, and that's the thing that's happening in sort of UK mainstream media as well. So like one of the big things that happened recently was, I think it was Kay Burley again. She interviewed someone who was a gender critical, and interviewed them for however long, did a full segment, and then there was no, like, basically this upset a bunch of people, because obviously it's just flat out, like, it's basically a pedestal. Go and fucking speak on news and you'll get a segment. And they said, why aren't you offering that to trans people? And the reply was, oh well, you can come on and debate. It's like, no, hang on a wee second. So what you're saying there is you've given someone who's transphobic a fucking full segment by themselves, and now you want them to also get invited on again with an opposing voice, rather than giving the opposing voice their own segment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this is the thing with, like, I mean, TV debates are garbage. They're absolute garbage. I've not watched Question Time in God knows how long, because the whole TV debate thing is just pish.
It used to give me migraines. I used to try watching it, and my blood pressure would rise so much that my doctor was eventually like, "You need to stay calm."
Oh no, it's just it's stinking. It's absolutely like the worst possible thing. And I can see, this is kind of back to our early point when we were talking about online activism. Like, I think there is there's a point where, like, online activism, like the focal point around Question Time, it used to be a really big thing. It was almost like it wasn't so much Question Time itself, it was the debate online after Question Time, and like no one had any intention of really having a good debate. It just become like a cheering match, and it was a total waste of time, where, like, doing something with your community or whatever it is would have been miles better. So that's, yeah.
You can choose your battles and choose the ones that support the people around you.
Yeah. It's interesting. Hex has mentioned a good point about Question Time there, that Fiona Bruce's husband gets public money and she has an active stake in being a kind of biased moderator. So, yeah, welcome to the BBC. I suppose we can move on to the next bit. How do you feel about your human rights being taken away? Fuck. Oh, this is a cheery stream.
It is.
So I suppose to lay the groundworks, UK government's kind of laid out its intention to revoke the European Convention of Human Rights and replace it with a Bill of Human Rights, a British Bill of Human Rights, which I don't know why. But well, one of the main reasons is that it will actually allow them to do the deportations to Rwanda. So that's one of the kind of major things, is that the UK government wants to not have to take in asylum seekers and wants to redeport these asylum seekers to Rwanda through a deal with the Rwandan government. Some of these asylum seekers may be from Rwanda, which is awful that the UK government want to send them back to Rwanda. But it also means anyone coming from anywhere could arrive in the UK and then be deported to Rwanda, which, Rwanda doesn't have the best track record when it comes to human rights itself. So there was a bunch of deportations supposed to happen. The Foreign Office, as Hex is mentioning, the Foreign Office actually flags this and issues safety warnings for British nationals going to Rwanda, but they've done a deal with the government. And one of the other things, which is quite interesting, but by pulling out of the European Convention of Human Rights, the European Convention of Human Rights underpins the Good Friday Agreement. It's like one of the key pieces of legislation that underpins peace in Northern Ireland. So, so that's good.
When I saw it happening, I was just like, oh, we're in the bad place. This is the
Fair
bad
enough.
timeline.
Yeah, I find it's funny how it's funny how Roe v. Wade happening and Boris Johnson being able to put out his big tweet condemning the US government and the United States for revoking Roe v. Wade. That bottoms him. Oh, like even Boris Johnson does that. It's like he's not all bad. He's evil. He's evil. His whole government's evil.
The people that let him on to Have I Got News for You for decades as a bumbling,
Oh,
likable fool
yeah.
should be hung up in the town square and executed, because they enabled him to become a public source of amusement and
Yeah.
entertainment, and people were able to think, well, he's harmless, he's just Boris Johnson, he's the funny guy in Have I Got News for You, and he's
Yeah.
a jackbooted fucking fascist.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, the thing I'm most scared about actually is Boris Johnson leaves and we get Prime Minister Priti Patel. That would be absolutely terrifying because, like, you think Boris Johnson's bad, fucking Priti Patel is a terrifying person, as in, like, she's not super bright by any means, but she's just evil.
No.
And unfortunately,
she's dedicated to her manifesto, and her manifesto is the maximum suffering of anyone that is not like her.
Oh, like I've had the misfortune of meeting her, and she's.
God, I'm so sorry.
She's, like and actually, I asked her a question. This was at a town hall meeting. But when I say town hall, I was working at the time for the organisation that she came to visit, and she was doing a variety of speeches and talks. This was immediately post Brexit. She was laying the groundwork about how everything was okay, so don't worry. And yeah, it was bad. Like I asked her if she agreed with Scottish Conservatives that were at the time doing what Scottish Conservatives do best, and that's dangling the carrot of, oh, the English. Like, the English Tories have done something really bad with Brexit, therefore we'll dangle federalism. And Labour do it as well. They dangle federalism whenever they want. So I asked her about it. I was like, do you agree with your Conservative colleagues in Scotland? And she just went, Scotland doesn't want independence. Doesn't want another referendum. I was like, no, that's not what I asked. And then she cut the town hall meeting short and left. I was like, fuck's sake. But yeah, that's she's not good. But I think, unfortunately in the UK, and it's why I'm interested in the strikes, like, as much.
Yes.
Like, I support the strikes anyway, but like that could be key to pivoting that into like a wider movement. Like, if we get a general strike going on while the European Convention of Human Rights has been revoked, like, you can quite easily make that the multi-pronged issue. Like, obviously cost of living in the UK is going up sky high. It's fucking minging. Everything from, gas and electric, but, price of goods. Like, I keep on coming back to it. Butter, like 500 grams of butter is now like £7.50, which is like, for anyone who's lived in the UK ever, like, that is ghastly. Like, that's fucking hot. That used to be, I think it was £3.50. Like, that's insane. And, it was like, obviously, there was the whole thing about the Jubilee as well. We don't need to talk about the Jubilee. Jubilee's terrible. The Queen's terrible. Monarchy's terrible. But the issue that a lot of pharmacies and stuff like that across the UK are facing is supply chain. Supply chain issues are massive, and they're in part due to Brexit. But they're also, I think there is obviously global shortages and things. But like, We've got local swimming pools closing down because they can't get chlorine to clean the pool, so they can't legally keep the pool open. And that's just gonna keep on fucking going. You know, that's like
It's almost like leaving the European Union was a bad idea.
almost. And I mean, to be honest, this is what I still get people asking me on Tumblr, and it's like, oh, would Scotland join the EU? And it's like, well, it's a bit of a no fucking brainer, to be perfectly honest. Like, obviously, if we have to join EFTA in the meantime, that's absolutely fine. But an independent Scotland should at some point join the EU. Like, that's just standard. Like, I think from that side of things, and like I've been asked the currency question recently as well. Currency for me, it can't be the pound. Like we cannot keep the pound. We do not want the pound dictated to us by the Bank of England, which, while independent from the British government, does obviously speak to each other about policies. We don't want our hands in any of that. We need an independent Scottish currency. Even if you do support joining the euro, we'll need that independent currency beforehand. It's the only way that we're actually going to be able to join, because we'll need to be able to control how our currency operates. So
if you go back to the dollar, Scotland had the dollar before the US did. We could just go back to having the dollar.
Yeah.
Just call it a dollar.
Scottish dollar.
Scottish dollar. Yeah.
I'm still holding out for our smackaroonies, but
smackaroonies.
Just it's like, how much is a pint? 5 smackaroonies. Nah, pints in Scotland won't be that expensive.
No.
Be one smackaroonie. There we go.
You'd have a full revolution if that was what's happening.
Yeah.
Or like, just this dragon saying the quid.
Yeah, the quid.
Not a quid.
Yeah, I mean it would make sense. But yeah, I think obviously the European Convention of Human Rights it's just like it's such a blatantly it's almost too on the fucking nose. Like it's what Evil Incorporated would do, or like Evil Nation in some random cartoon from like 2003. Like
if you wrote it into a novel, they'd say it was too heavy-handed, and
yeah,
yet it's just reality. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just yeah. Don't know. We're trying not to end on a bleak point here, actually, because there's a lot of good stuff happening with it. I mean,
there is.
Like you've got to think like light in the darkness. There's fantastic people out there doing lots of good work in regards to protesting and raising money and like providing security and answers for a lot of people who maybe aren't as well read up on all of this. Like, I know that I'm not particularly well versed on the ins and outs of Roe v. Wade. I will like as someone who isn't American, I will probably never have that cultural understanding of how it impacts like states. I mean, I only recently learned that trigger states actually exist. I'd always kind of heard the term, but like states that actually had trigger laws in place that the moment it was revoked, it would like fucking go like that, and it would, it would enact a whole bunch of laws to repeal various legislation. I think that is horrifying, and I hate that they were able to prime it.
That was news to me too, and I've been here for 10 years.
Yeah.
I knew what they were, but I was like, surely there'll be time. Surely there will be time in between. No, instant.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Shit.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm in a very privileged position. I'm a foreigner in this country. I was going to say I can always go home, but considering home is currently considering
on fire.
It's a bit like standing in whilst Rome is burning and being sacked, and you hear Mount Vesuvius going in the distance. It's like those two timelines have converged, and you're going, "Oh, we're there." Never mind. I'm just going to focus on this fire. So but yeah, for me it was like I knew the significance of it, because when I moved here, I knew there were certain things that were not as set in stone as they felt in the UK. Because I will say this much. If you are looking at the US and thinking it can never happen in your country, you are kidding yourself. This is people like... There's people like this in every country, and they are testing the ground to see how far we can get with this. And it's that kind of, you need to be aware of it, and you also need to be educated, because what happens here will ripple around the Western world.
Yeah. I
And
think it's it's a good point that Blind Panda Bear mentioned as well, and this is why it's so important that this is met with resistance now, because like they will steamroll through a wide variety of legislation that takes out a whole bunch of traditionally protected rights. So what Blind Panda Bear's saying there, cops no longer have to read you your Miranda rights, which is massive, because now everyone in the US is required to know the Miranda rights themselves. It's not going to be told to you by an arresting police officer, and you know that's fucking important. Like, you know, understanding that your rights, you know, anything that you can, and I don't even know. I've watched too many TV shows, but anything that you say can be used against you in a court of law, like that sort of stuff. Like the fact that that can't be said to, or the police officers can choose not to say that to people, allows them to arrest more people and jail more people. So yeah, just be safe. I know I was saying we need to end this cheerily, and then we've gone into, yeah, actually there's more shit being taken away. Yeah, I mean, it's hello lovely scientist saying you have the right to an attorney. Like the fact that won't be mentioned now. Like, you know, obviously you've got. I'm not sure. I don't think the Miranda rights mention a phone call exactly, but like if people don't know that they have a right to a phone call at a police station, I mean, for all we know, they might fucking try and dismantle that right anyway.
yeah.
And you know, like, let's be serious. The fact that they can say police no longer have to tell you your Miranda rights means they might actually end up fucking coming for the Miranda rights as well. So there's a whole variety of things there that just need to be considered. And I know that is particularly dark, but I think that's why community organisation at this moment is so important. As well, like, you know, and it's community organisation. Obviously, there's the people who will do the resisting and the campaigning against this, but then there's also the fallback groups like you know, Planned Parenthood, and I dare say there's probably a very wide network across the UK that are you know, sorry, not the UK, across the US that are going to be helping out people in different ways. We have linked Planned Parenthood. I think, Joy, I believe it takes you locally if you're in the US.
Yeah, it should
That link.
divert to where you are, and you can always find your local, or the closest to you, I should say,
Yep.
because not everyone has a local one now. But the
And
Planned Parenthood are doing a lot of the organising, and they're working with a lot of other organisations as well to try and mitigate some of this chaos. So if anyone is, there are other organisations, but the one that I don't have to spend a lot of time researching is Planned Parenthood. So that's the one we're going with for now.
yeah,
There is a post going around Tumblr with some other organisations. If you see that one, great, fantastic. But the main one will be Planned Parenthood, because they are on the front line. So
yeah.
the Planned Parenthood's a good shout. If you've got any extra money or just any free time to volunteer, yeah, they need it. They need all the people they can get at the moment. So
Yep. And yeah, again, I think it's nice to see. So I'm not hopeless. I'm pissed off from D Grim there. It's like, yeah, now's the time to get as fucking angry as you possibly can.
Yes.
And we'll go from there. But you know, who knows where we'll be next week? Obviously, the weekend. These things are announced on a Friday, so people have the weekend, and all of the anger and rage burns out over the course of the weekend. It's really down to you know, obviously the people in the US, but also people in the UK who are dealing with that shit. That we don't allow that to happen, and we don't let that fire burn out, because that's what they're relying on. So
yes,
remain fucking angry, I suppose. Is the best possible way to end this stream. So Joy, do you have anything to add on that before we go into kind of wrap up, or?
I think we've covered everything. I just want to reiterate that self-care is vital. It's vital anyway,
Yeah.
but it's extremely vital during these times because, like you're saying, they want you to get burned out, they want you to be exhausted, and they want you to be compliant and non-resistant. Put your own oxygen mask on first. If you are unable to handle the news, that's fine. You're not a bad person because you can't handle it.
Yeah.
Um,
And it peaks
my,
and troughs
you
as
know,
well. Like, I
yeah,
mean, if you can't handle it one day, there's nothing wrong with taking a break. Like, you might see yourself as a champion activist who's, able to do that, but like you need to take a rest when you can, because if you're not at your best, you're not going to be able to help anyone else. So, better to
activism is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You
yeah.
need to pace yourself and you need to make sure you're hydrated and you're well fed and you're taking your meds, and you need to find people to run with as well, because it's not a individual race, it's a community race.
Yeah.
Um, and it's ongoing. It is ongoing, it never ends. As someone who's been doing disability advocacy and activism for since I was about maybe 5 years old.
I was going to say maybe about 30 years, Joy.
30 years. It never ends because there is always someone that is looking to strip away something important to you. And the biggest source of comfort and progress you will find is in community. And there's such a streak of individualism these days. You have to learn to put that aside to some degree and just get involved. It's so easy to fall into the trap of feeling helpless. But I do feel that, personally at least, when I'm involved at a local level, I do feel more hopeful because you do see the progress, you see that people get helped, and you do see change happening at the ground level. It may feel hopeless in the broad scheme of things, but every inch is a victory against things like this. And just please take care of yourselves. I've seen so many people just despairing, and I understand that despair. I really, really do. I understand that we're all tired and burned out, but you're not alone. There is community, and there are people that are going to fight until the very end. And the thing is, it never will end because there's always going to be people that are fighting for the right things. So please take heart from that and just take care. Just please take care. You're so important. If you weren't as important, they wouldn't be fighting so hard to take away your rights. That's it.
Yeah. Sorry, Joy. You were supposed to speak for a wee bit longer. I was trying to do something. You've
I can keep going. I can
yeah,
start.
just keep going for a couple of seconds. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, just I don't know. Just find your community, find yourselves, and take care of yourself, and just make sure you're eating, sleeping as much as you can, and just as Dragonstein said, it will never end, but you don't have to run every step yourself. There are people that will pick up the baton from you when you are done.
Cool. I'm good now. I'm good now.
You good?
No,
You good?
yeah,
Fine.
all good. No, cool. No, right. So we can wrap up there. So just for those of you maybe joined without the intro, me and Joy are obviously joined in the AyeSphere. This is our fifth kind of episode of our interactive podcast that we've got going here. And hopefully you're seeing week on week it's getting a little bit more professional, but not too much. We can't have it going too much. Yeah, but the idea is, well, originally we were gonna have a cheerier stream. we were gonna have a cheerier podcast, but we couldn't avoid some of the big ticket items that are kind of coming down the line. If you would like, as Laura Synthesis has just done, if you liked the stream and you thought it was useful or informative or you enjoyed it in any way, please do consider giving the stream a follow. We are every kind of week on Sunday. This is obviously my personal Twitch channel, but I'll get to that in a wee bit. Obviously, me and Joy are different types of creators from across the field, but this is good because it means that I can point you towards ways you can support Joy, and I don't need to do any sort of she doesn't need to have to do it. So Joy is a fantastic author and writes a wonderful collection of short stories, but a novel as well called Hunger Pangs. I have dropped a link to Fangs in the chat. You should check out PHIP and you'll be able to get both the novel itself and the
And the
audiobook.
short stories.
And the
short
short
stories. And the audiobook, yeah.
And the audiobook.
Yes.
And the flip side of that as well, if you've already got your copy, and you maybe don't want to buy another one, you can also support Joy on Patreon as well.
Thank you.
I think Patreon gets you access to your Discord, I believe.
It does, yes. I've got my own private Discord that I'm starting to do a bunch of different things with. Was hoping to do it sooner, but unfortunately, if you're not aware, I do disability activism because I'm multiply disabled and my migraines make it very difficult to do things. But I am starting to do body doubling sessions in my Discord soon, which if you're not familiar with that, it can be very useful for neurodivergent people who struggle to focus on their own. So if you are around in my Discord, look out for that. I'll be starting to do body doubling sessions so that you can hang out and work with me if you want. Otherwise, I'm usually watching one of Aye's streams because I find those to be incredibly useful when I'm trying to get stuff done.
I'm body doubling while you're body doubling.
Yes, yeah. So I really do enjoy watching your streams though. The support I get from your community is fantastic. I really am so thankful for everybody they've come on here and they've gone, well, I'm not really into vampires, and now you're all just sitting in my inbox going, when's the next vampire? So thank you very much for your support, and your community is wonderful. I'm so glad to be part of it. So, which brings me on to what you do, and you are obviously a very fun streamer to watch. Very nice, chill atmosphere.
Please please follow.
Please like and follow, please. And we also have your YouTube as well, where you keep all your stuff archived, as well as our archive as well. But yeah, please do follow Aye. He has a fantastic community. It's very chill. It's a very nice, non-shouty stream. Because I know for me, a lot of the time when it comes to watching a lot of people stream video games, the shouting puts me off. Your streams, I will literally turn it on in the background and I will get a whole chapter written. So that's my endorsement for watching your streams. They are very good for just hanging out with people, having a chill time, and also being incredibly entertained when you face plant into things. So that's also fun. So, but please do follow and please do subscribe if you have. Even if you have a free Prime one, please do consider subscribing. So
thanks. And if you're not in my Discord, you're more than welcome to join. I'm gonna drop the link. I think I dropped the link to the YouTube there. I might have missed it. Depends if chat.
You did. I did see it go past.
Okay, sound. That's cool. And of course, you can catch me and Joy on Tumblr. Tumblr is its own personal hell that we're dealing with. But it's fun for the most part when people aren't being dickheads. And I suppose just lastly from me, the job hunt continues. And if you want to, you can absolutely support me on Ko-Fi. It's hugely appreciative. There's been some really kind and generous people that have got me through the last month, particularly when it comes to bills and stuff like that. Like I said, my energy bill's kind of gone through the roof. It's now up to like £200 a month, which is kind of horrible. But yeah, I'd like to kind of appreciate and say thanks to anyone who's kind of helped me out there. I think that's me. I suppose the other thing you can do if you really want me to like stream one of your favourite games, the Steam sale's on. Feel free to gift me anything. That's fine. I don't mind.
Yeah. Sounds like a good shout.
And if you want to make sure that Holly Mop is well fed with treats, you can go and support Joy's Patreon as well.
Thank you.
We've decided to do that rather than a joint AyeSphere.
It's the struggle of also trying to promote our own stuff, and then we're just kind of like, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll take over for you and you take over for me. We'll just mom friend our way through this.
That's the best way of doing it. Plus, it's the Iron Brew sponsorship will come in time. It's fine.
Eventually,
it's fine. But I think with that, folks, we're gonna see you later. We've kept it to 2 hours. I'm surprised we managed to keep it to 2 hours, Joy. That's not bad.
I am chuffed that we managed it.
But no, I really do thank everyone for watching, and we'll probably be talking about a couple of other things next week, unless the world fucking explodes, which no doubt it will. But we'll be trying to have like different topics. This has obviously been a really, really heavy stream. We've been dealing with human rights and Roe v. Wade, which is I suppose human rights, and strikes and all the rest. So quite very, very political things and quite sad and horrifying and things you should get angry about. But we did have a plan for maybe a lighter touch stream, which we'll maybe do next time. But yeah,
Fingers crossed.
as Laura Synthesis says, victory to the workers, and hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday. Catch you in a bit,
Bye, everyone.
folks. Bye bye.